Cancurlia deputies, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to make a statement here on community safety and preventing crime. I'm also looking forward to listening to the contribution from deputies and working with them on this issue. Members of the House will be aware that the mission of An Garda Síochána is keeping people safe. This is a simple message, but a very clear one. Community safety, though, is a much broader concept than crime or fear of crime. Community safety is about people being safe and feeling safe within their own communities. It can include the responsiveness of emergency services, mental health issues, education, drug prevention, alcohol and substance abuse, domestic violence, youth crime, antisocial behaviour, hate crime and the built environment. This is reflected in the key principle of the programme for government, our shared future to build stronger and safer communities. The well-being of our communities is amongst our highest priority, and we want members of the public to feel confident and secure in going about their lives. As the Commission on the Future of Policing in Ireland recognised, community safety in this broad sense is not just the responsibility of An Garda Síochána. Responses need to be community-specific and require a range of services, everything from strengthening youth services to increasing street lighting. This requires a multi-sectoral approach, stronger interagency, collaboration and community engagement, with a key role for health and social services as well as other sectors of society. A policing service for our future, which is the Government's implementation plan for the recommendations of the Commission on the Future of Policing, is strongly based around meeting the public needs in this way through increased visibility of our Gardaí on our streets and increased engagement with all local communities in order to ensure their participation and their needs are being met. Community engagement has, of course, been a defining feature of An Garda Síochána since its establishment 100 years ago. This has perhaps never been more evident than during the COVID-19 pandemic, with local Gardaí nationwide going above and beyond the call of duty to support vulnerable groups within their communities. These efforts on part of individual Gardaí include visiting elderly, vulnerable members of the community, dropping off food, medicine and other necessities, also liaising with representatives of community groups and many other focused efforts to serve their communities, too many to list here. I want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank An Garda Síochána again for their extraordinary commitment to policing during what has been an unprecedented year. As the Policing Authority have noted, the rich relationships which have been built during this period should create a strong foundation for the future of policing within this country moving forward. It is important that we now build the structures which can ensure community safety is embedded in the work of the State in all communities across the country. In line with the recommendations of the Commission on the Future of Policing, my department has been developing a new national community safety policy which will feed into the development of a new policy or policing and community safety bill. The bill itself, which will provide the backbone to policing reform, will redefine the functions of An Garda Síochána to include the prevention of harm to those who are vulnerable. However, the problems communities face are not just limited to policing issues. Bringing the right services together, working with each other to tackle the underlying issues which impact on a community and the sense of safety within the community is absolutely key. The legislation will therefore place an obligation on departments, state agencies, local authorities, all to cooperate with An Garda Síochána in relation to the broader issue of community safety and refine local structures to better support local accountability for policing. As part of this work, last week I announced 3 new local community safety partnerships which will be established on a pilot basis in Dublin North Inner City electoral area, Waterford and Longford. The locations of the pilots, which will run for 24 months, were chosen based on a number of factors. This includes population density, crime rates and deprivation. The partnerships, which will be independently chaired, will replace the local joint policing committees, building on those existing structures and bringing together residents, community representatives. This includes youth, new communities in the voluntary sector. There will be business interests, councillors, local authorities and state services such as An Garda Síochána, TUSLA and the HSE. The agenda and the objective of each partnership will be driven by the community itself, and each partnership will devise and implement a local community safety plan reflecting their own community priorities and local safety issues. The model is built on the principle that every community needs to be central in identifying what it needs, and helping to shape solutions in state services will of course be held to account by each partnership. The active engagement of community reps and residents will be critical in ensuring the work is community driven, and so training will be provided to support the capacity of each partnership to work together, with individual training for residents to develop their understanding of their role and confidence in representing their own community. As the pilots progress, they will be carefully evaluated, and any changes that are necessary will be made to ensure that the partnerships work as effectively as possible for all of the communities concerned. The pilots will inform a national rollout in all local authority areas. The Commission on the Future of Policing recognises that while preventing and investigating crime is a top priority for An Garda Síochána, in practice the majority of police time in Ireland and elsewhere is actually spent on harm prevention. Often, particularly out of hours, it is An Garda Síochána who are at the front line when dealing with persons with mental health, with addiction issues, homeless persons and others who are at risk. As well as taking a multi-agency approach to planning for and responding to the day-to-day community safety, it is also necessary to ensure that a cooperative approach is taken to handling which can be an emergency situation involving an individual who, for instance, as a result of mental health or addiction issues, may be at risk to themselves or may pose a risk to others. This approach would see a multi-agency crisis intervention team put in place with round-the-clock response capabilities, and ultimately, where possible, these teams would be co-located. These teams would involve police working with health, including mental health and substance abuse interventions, as well as social and youth workers with the capacity to respond to emergencies and intervene with people at risk within their communities. Local safety community partnerships could identify areas of need within the community that would benefit from the support of crisis intervention teams. They could also foster and develop relationships and communications between the local services at local level. My department will continue to explore how these teams can be established and supported, including through engagement with An Garda Síochána, other government departments and relevant service providers. I know this is an extremely ambitious target, but I think this is something that if we can bring together and all agencies come together, it will be very useful and helpful. In hand with this work, crucial day-to-day policing has continued throughout the pandemic, with a particular emphasis on those vulnerable groups most at risk. While there has been a general and a welcome decrease in many categories of crime during the COVID period, some categories have unfortunately increased, such as domestic abuse, drug offences and cybercrime. Sustained action by An Garda Síochána has continued unabated throughout the pandemic, bringing significant convictions and ongoing seizures of drugs, firearms and ammunition. An Garda Síochána remains 100% committed to tackling the supply of drugs by supporting local communities through various preventative and detection initiatives and engagement with local and regional drug and alcohol task forces, the Garda Youth Diversion Programmes and projects, the Garda Schools Programme and the existing joint policing committees and community policing fora. And Minister Brown will develop further and talk further about the youth justice side of things. Operation Fuisuf has meanwhile provided enhanced proactive support to victims of domestic abuse, including proactively reaching out and making contact with previous victims to provide reassurance, to provide support and to offer assistance of local and specialised resources, as well as renewing the focus on the enforcement of court orders and the prosecution of offenders. I would once again remind the public that travel restrictions do not apply in the case of domestic abuse or when you are escaping a risk of harm, and I would strongly encourage anyone who finds themselves or indeed members of their family in this position to contact An Garda Síochána, or they can visit the website stillhere.ie. This work has been supported with unprecedented resources, which of course is necessary. An Garda Síochána has been allocated €1.952 billion in the budget for 2021. There are now some 14,600 Gardaí nationwide, supported by over 3,000 Garda staff. Furthermore, the rollout of the new Garda operating model will support the redeployment of Gardaí from non-core duties to frontline policing across the country. There has also been provisions for additional members of An Garda Síochána, which by next year, obviously taking into account COVID-19, should bring our figures to over 15,000. If we look at the funding allocated for new vehicles, which is extremely important, obviously in particular in our rural areas, 15 million has been allocated this year, 9 million with an additional 6 later on in the year, which will bring about 524 new vehicles. Before concluding, I would like to note the work of the former Director of Probation Service, Vivian Gearan. I have appointed Vivian Gearan to carry out a scoping exercise to assess the impact that criminal activity, in particular in Drogheda, is having on the community and to make recommendations for action going forward. Mr Gearan is expected to complete his work in the coming weeks. Likewise, the Dublin City Council North Central Area Committee recently engaged with the former Assistant Garda Commissioner Jack Nolan to develop a socio-economic and a community plan for the Dáil area. My department will engage with the findings and recommendations arising from the report to ensure its implementation. In closing, Ceann Comhairle, I would like to acknowledge that our vision for community safety is ambitious. It will require sustained commitment, it will require perseverance on part of government departments, state agencies, community and voluntary organisations. However, I believe the realisation of this vision will provide, a truly holistic support framework for all communities, recognising their unique strengths and responding to their greatest needs. As Minister, I am fully committed to this work of building stronger and safer communities, and I look forward to working with all deputies to progress this vital work.